When we hauled out in Penasco, Mexico in September of 2022, we never expected that the boat would remain out of the water, or on the hard, until May of 2023, a whole 8 months later. We transited the Panama Canal in late March of 2022 and spent the next 6 months racing north and dodging hurricanes with our friends on Sailing Vessel Delos and Sailing Vessel One Life. Once in Penasco and unaware of what our future held, we told the yard manager at Cabrales Boatyard that we would be back in the water in about 6 weeks. Before this haul out, Calico Skies has been out of the water for a total of just 2 weeks in the past 7 years and 35,000 miles of travel. We began our journey in 2016, sailing from New York City to the Bahamas, on to the Caribbean, and then across the Atlantic to Europe. Then we sailed back across the Atlantic, up through the Caribbean and on to Nova Scotia, Canada, then back down to the Bahamas, then back north to Maine, then down again over to Mexico and south to Panama. So how did 6 weeks become 8 months? Well, Calico had several surprises in store for us, not to mention my own body, which unbeknownst to us was also holding secrets. But in the end, our boat was transformed into the yacht she was always meant to be. So with that, let's dive into it. After hauling Calico, we flew to Annapolis for the U.S. Sailboat Show, and while we were there, the boat was sandblasted in Cabrales Boatyard, revealing surprise number 1. Numerous blisters or delamination spots where moisture had imbued into the deepest layer of paint or barrier coat.
We definitely have some hull work to do on the boat this haul out. Now we've been soda blasted, you can see some layers of, I think these are blisters popping out. I'm sounding the hull to try to find blisters. We definitely noticed some raised areas, and I've gone ahead and started circling them. You could hear rings, bud, bud, bud. That means there's some delaminated fiberglass in there.
To fix them, we first ground each blister until we hit clean fiberglass, then waited a few weeks for them to dry before beginning the process of repairing them.
Oh, and it's definitely still dripping.
First, glassing several layers of 1708 biaxial cloth to each blister, followed by multiple rounds of fairing and sanding until each spot was smooth and flush with the hull.
So the rudder is where we really started taking a turn on our refit. We had dropped it down assuming we just needed a new bushing, but when we dropped it and cleaned up the rudder shaft, we noticed very severe pitting on the rudder shaft. We had a lot of debate as to whether the rudder shaft was solid stainless or hollow pipe. In the end, it was hollow pipe, which is it was a Schedule 80 pipe, which is like 6 or 7 mils, and we had some bits that were like 2 to 3. We got lucky that there was a mold in Florida for our exact boat, so that made it a little bit easier. But this is where we knew the refit was turning into a big one and not just slap some bottom paint on and go. In some ways, it was nice that we didn't have to go and build a rudder. It was nice that we just had to wait the 6-7 weeks for the rudder to come in, and then there was a number of dry fits to install it. Had to go up and down and out of the boat. We had to drill some holes for the quadrant, drill some holes for the pin that keeps it from dropping out of the boat. It was a bit of a to-do, but while we were at it, we went ahead and replaced all the other steering components as well, like the chain, the cables, so it feels good to have that all refreshed now.
One of the things that was plaguing us up the entire coast of Central America was our dinghy davits and solar array.
This weather kind of sucks. Really, really windy and choppy on this point.
On 2 occasions, we broke the ball joint where the davit attaches to the hull.
It actually sheared off like a little like eye socket in there. You can see it just sheared right off. So I'm trying to get the rest of this that's in the davit arm into here, so it's off the fiberglass, secured, more secure. I mean, it's still obviously has to play normally. So I think as long as there's downward load and everything everything is ratchet strapped in, it should be okay.
And by the time we made it to Penasco, the structure was on its last legs and no longer seaworthy.
This is just to get us to the next.
Yeah, it's to find a welder or come up with a better solution. Look how much flex has been developed in this structure. This is why something has to give, or we're gonna lose these panels in the next big storm we're in.
So we decided to build a new, stronger one and hired the yard's welder, Ricky, to turn our dream into a reality.
All this refit work is making me thirsty, and that's why we're proud to announce that LMNT is the sponsor of this week's video. LMNT is a science-backed electrolyte drink with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 of potassium, and 60 of magnesium. LMNT is useful for everyone, including professional athletes, Olympians, and even Navy SEALs. Check out Grace and I nailing a speech landing like Mandos. LMNT helps eliminate electrolyte deficiency symptoms, which include fatigue, cramping, and headaches. LMNT is offering our viewers a free sample pack with any order placed. This way you can try all 8 flavors for free. Get yours at drinklmnt.com/calico. Hola!
Our goal was to make the structure stronger and bigger, eliminating the sideways flex and providing more headroom and space for solar. We used 1 1/4 inch stainless pipe with a thick inner wall to achieve this, and by the end, used a total of 120 feet of pipe.
Más bonito.
Más bonito.
Yeah, I know, it looks great.
We moved the davit attachment points higher to a stronger part of the stern and added attachment points to the deck for better load distribution. We added D-rings for ratchet straps, a fillet table, and multiple handholds, and on top, we're able to fit 2 410 sun-powered yachts solar panels, plus a third 410 panel on top of the davit arms.
So Bill keeps doing this, and it's really making me uncomfortable.
We kind of like stress tested this thing by just like really shaking it. It had a lot more play before, especially side to side.
We decided to add canvas to our new structure since our old canvas was shot, having been restitched multiple times over 7 years. We added roll-up sunshade panels to the entire enclosure and lights throughout. More cockpit improvements included painting the binnacle, varnishing the table, entryway, and companionway boards, and applying teak oil to the cockpit combings. And we had our wheel cover replaced.
So it's just worn.
We also moved our nav instruments to a new location and added a new autopilot controller to the group.
We're going to get rid of these since we're going to have this. And we got new cushions that are going to go here.
Exactly.
We sealed the old spots to make way for our new cockpit cushion seat backs.
Looks pretty good there.
Next up, with the blisters dried, glassed, filled, and faired, bottom painting began. Beginning with barrier coat to protect the fiberglass from water intrusion.
So that is all 5 coats of barrier. Yeah, super stoked at how smooth the boat is. Ready to go racing.
Next, we applied 2 layers of blue Total Boat Spartan ablative paint, followed by 5 coats of black paint. The different color layers will help with tracking wear of the paint over time. A very common issue with external keels hung on keel bolts is the gap that forms between the hull and the lead keel. This gap or crack is a result of the 2 materials flexing differently. It looks like previous owners had tried to repair this gap with epoxy, but having no flex, the material cracked. So we opted to clean up the old epoxy and fill the gap with a flexible, paintable 5200 sealant. We estimate that the total bottom job was a few hundred man-hours. Since Calico Skies was out of commission and we were living in an apartment, it was finally time to clean up the battery box. Our new Battleborn lithium batteries were installed quickly in Panama City before we departed on a 3,000-mile passage north to escape hurricane season. As part of the cleanup, we added new positive and negative distribution hubs and centralized all the fusing. We also expanded access to the battery box for those new components, adding a hinged door for more space and better access. In the background to this, I'd been diagnosed with breast cancer and was preparing for mastectomy surgery, traveling back and forth between Penasco and Scottsdale, Arizona. As soon as I was recovered enough to travel, we got to work on a million smaller projects in an effort to complete below the waterline work in preparation to float once again. After almost 5 months, it was hard to believe we still had so many smaller projects to complete before we could launch. Our below-the-waterline refit improvements included servicing our bronze tapered cone through hulls, installing a prop cutter and treating our prop with prop speed, adding the new forward scan and replacing the depth transducer, replacing the stuffing box on the rudder shaft and the prop shaft, and replacing the rudder bushing, wheel brake, steering cables, and steering chain. Now we scrambled to cross as many small to-dos off the list before our launch and subsequent relaunch. And though our initial launch was a failure due to a leaking through hull, our new forward scan, our second attempt was a success after resealing the through hull using mechanical advantage. This brings us to the end of the 5-month mark and the beginning of a few more projects and many more improvements to the now floating Calico skies. Our sails, though in decent shape considering their 35,000 miles, were on our list. Our Spinnaker actually dated back to 2004, before we owned Calico skies, and our main and jib over a decade old. Though we may have gotten a couple more seasons out of our faithful white sails, our spinny was torn, and with our hearts set on a Pacific crossing someday, considering a fresh set seemed like a good idea. Enter Precision Sails, our partners who we worked with on our staysail a couple years ago.
I think they call this a slutter, sloop cutter, or either that or it's called a Solent rig because it's going up to the top of the masthead.
First, we collaborated on a new spinny design, something bright enough to compete with our old rainbow design. Then we worked on a new jib design featuring our logo, and at the moment also have a mainsail in the works, which we'll show you as soon as we get it.
The award for the longest project goes to the fuel tanks. That took us probably 2 to 3 months between ordering and receiving and also demolition to get the tanks out. Huge change for Calico skies though. Having a boat that travels as much as ours does with only 18 gallons of diesel is kind of absurd. So that is probably the MVP upgrade we did, minus some of the solar panels and stuff like that. In terms of safety, it's really helping us because we are now filtering fuel and we're taking better care of our fuel and our engine, which is something I've been wanting to do. Now we just have a few jerry cans on deck for gasoline and denatured alcohol for the stove, but
we carry a whopping
50 gallons of diesel inside the boat. So we went from 18 to 50, which is a huge increase.
Last, but definitely not least, we put many, many hours into Calico's interior, beginning with varnish work started in the yard, bringing our salon table back to a scratch-free finish and the galley gleaming again. Next, we tackled a ton of smaller projects, like replacing port lights, deep cleaning and purging, and adding canvas pieces to various spots to help conceal areas where visually unappealing things are stored.
So, put up snaps here. We always refer to the aft cabin as our garage.
Look at all that stuff we're hiding. We have a jack rib, we have a big drone. We also had another curtain here in front.
Oh yes.
So all the towels stay put.
So in bedroom we did some stuff too. Here. This was Bill's idea. I was kind of reluctant at first, I don't know why, but we put the canvas.
Yep, and dehumidifier running and then everything's labeled in plastic, keep it protected.
And also when we sail,
things can't fly out.
I almost forgot to highlight this beautiful addition.
Oh yeah, we added that piece of canvas too. That's where all our spare parts are, like pumps and head pumps and fresh water pumps and hoses.
A piece of canvas that conceals
lots of screws and socket wrenches.
We fixed our galley sliders, replaced the head pump, fixed the relay switch on the water maker boost pump, replaced the membranes, and installed an inline TDS monitor. We added a hinge to our freezer cabinetry, replaced our fruit net with new smaller ones,
new chrome holders,
installed various hooks, and made many small cosmetic improvements.
Welcome to our new galley. We have our air fryer now, which we didn't have before.
The only reason we're able to power these is because of all the additional solar we added onto the arch.
An induction cooktop that we place here when we cook. This was all varnished and cleaned that with baking soda too. Reorganized everything. We
replaced the VHF radio, so that's all brand new.
We'd steam cleaned our cushions months ago, and with yacht-like interior lighting added as a final touch, our home feels like a totally new space.
Insulation is
Toast.
In the spirit of keeping things real, which we always strive to do, there's more work to be done. It's a boat, and there's always a list. And when we put pencils down early July, there were still things we wished we'd had time left to do. But we've made massive improvements, many of which will pay dividends for years to come. And after our summer cruise in the Sea of Cortez, we'll hit the project list again before we set off on our next adventure. In the meantime, we'll enjoy the fruits of our labors in our shiny new yacht, and as always, we'll be taking you with us.